All right, ladies and gentlemen, special day right now. The vibes are in the air. UFC 314 fight day. And before the prelims kick off, we have a very special Q&A preview show for everybody out there with a very, very special man. It's in order to be joined by one of my faves, one of half of the Alex Florian podcast. He's an absolute legend, fighting names such as BJ Penn, Tekanori Gomi, Roger Huerta, Joe Lozon, Din Thomas, just to name a few. Runner-up on the iconic first ever Tough season, and one of my favorite guys that can break it all down, make it all make sense. And there's a lot to be made sense of this weekend as we go into the big fight. Kenny Florian. How about this? How did I get so lucky? How did I get you onto this show?
What's happening, bro? How you doing,
How does this happen, man? I just don't know how this happens.
Every once in a while, you get lucky, you know? That's it.
That's it, man. That's it. I love it. I put in the lottery and I won. Hey, I got to ask you this. How does it feel, dude? We actually made it to UFC 314. We lost Prades and Neil, but most of the fights stayed strong on the card. You can argue that people are more excited than ever. Like, these cards have more meaning. Almost every single fight on the main card. Huge implications. How's it feel that we made it to this fight day today, man?
It's great, man. We have ourselves an amazing card. Certainly the main card is very, very strong. One of the strongest we've had in a long time. And you know it's a good card when there's a ton of fights on the prelims that you want to see. So that's what gets me excited, man. A lot of good matchups, a lot of interesting matchups, a lot of important matchups that obviously have meaning in their respective divisions. And we'll see what happens tonight.
Dude, it's going to shape everything.
Yeah.
This thing is going to shape everything. It's going to be a coming and going of the guard. It's going to be what's going to be happening. What kind of matchups are we going to be making? Just quickly, before we get into the card, dude, I know when you were fighting in the UFC, your legendary run, obviously you were tied with BJ Penn. You had the battle with him. You sort of spoke to him as not a mentor, but someone like you aspired to. And then, you kind of tried to take the belt off him. You had that whole storyline there. But I got to ask you, it must be tough for you, just like for a lot of us when we see what's going on with him right now, when we see his social media. It just keeps getting worse and worse, right? Like, this is one of our guys. Like, for all of us, this was one of the GOATs. What's your reaction, dude, when you're seeing BJ put this stuff out? It's just crazy, isn't it?
It is, clearly it seems like, something's going on, whether that's directly related to his previous fights and kind of the damage he took. I don't know. I would assume so. And it just shows, like, BJ was one of these guys that was absolutely invincible in his prime, was known for having one of the best chins in UFC history, fought in multiple weight classes. Again, I have a hard time coming up with names that could beat him in his prime. When he was at his best, BJ was an absolute beast, and a guy that was way ahead of everybody else. Like, this kind of skills that he brought to the game. And he was so talented and a lot of times didn't have to train so hard for things. But what it shows is that a guy with all of that, no matter what, you are human. And if you continue to take damage in this game, it will get the best of you eventually. And he is still a legendary fighter, but, fought way too long. It's really hard for a competitive person, professional athlete, to say goodbye to that life. And it is. You're saying goodbye to a part of yourself. And I think for BJ, he stayed in the game a little too long, took a lot of damage along the way, lost to guys that I thought were inferior to him skill-wise. But anyways, it's just really sad to see what he's dealing with right now. I hope he's going to be able to get help and get better. But it's tough to see.
Dude, so tough to see. And you know what else is tough to see sometimes? When there's a new generation of MMA fan, they don't even really know, some of these legends, like what you've done, what BJ's done. I got to ask you, like, if you line up a prime BJ Penn in your mind today in the featherweight, lightweight division, what do you think that looks like? How do you think he goes?
Yeah, I still think he would give Islam Makhachev absolute fits. I think he's that skilled just based on his Brazilian jiu-jitsu alone, and how he matches up against another phenomenal grappler in Islam Makhachev. While his wrestling is phenomenal, Islam, of course, I'm talking about, and his control is excellent. But BJ was so good at countering that style. I mean, he was able to do it against Matt Hughes at 170 pounds, who was also known for that style. And, I think that BJ Penn in his prime would have the ability or the capability of not only knocking out Islam Makhachev, but also potentially submitting him as well. So I think he would match up really, really well against him. And it goes to show how far ahead he was with his skills. This was a guy that was doing a lot of things before a lot of people back then. So way ahead of his time. And I still think he may be the GOAT at lightweight for sure.
Hey, by the way, going into this show today, did you see I effed up a few things? And the guys are making me pay for it in the comment section. Did you see this?
I did not. Oh,
Kenny Lynch. Accidentally put Kenny Lynch.
I did not see that.
Now everyone in the comment section's giving me shit. They're all giving me shit. How dare you,
sir? I'm out of here.
Dude.
Have a good one,
Kenny. I said it's a mythical combination of James Lynch and Kenny Florian, a magical Canadian Kenny Florian that
you were flustered by my fame, is what it was. You were so just starstruck, I think, is what it was, right?
I mean, there are people out here still hoping Kenny Lynch shows up. Listen, guys, I'm sorry.
That's brilliant.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry that might not happen, but we might have some fun surprise guests as we go on in the show. Ken, let's get into this Alex Volkanovski fight right here, because there's so many questions. There's so many things that are going to get answered, I suppose, this weekend. He took the big break. He's in the best shape of his life. He's had a chance to prep properly, game plan. This is a different version of Alex Volkanovski that we haven't seen in a while. But, Luke Thomas has said it. And, the math doesn't lie. The science doesn't lie. It's hard for a fighter when they've gone through what Alex has gone through with the age that he has to come back to the awesomeness, to the greatness that once was. It just hasn't really been done before. I think he's going up against a bunch of records. He's going to be breaking a sort of setting precedents if he's able to do it this weekend. I want to know from you, what kind of version of Alex Volkanovski are you expecting to step into that cage today against Diego Lopez in Miami?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, I just recognized your shirt. That is amazing. I saw the Boston Celtics Cup as well. So I'm loving it, dude. I'm loving it. So
November 22, 2001. Let us all remember that.
One of the best performances of all time. Yeah, absolutely. So in regards to Volk, it's hard to tell, right? He's coming off back-to-back knockout losses, which can be devastating for anybody, no matter what age you're at. However, I do like the fact that he's had a long layoff. Those are the kind of things that you want to see for someone who has taken damage or a significant amount of damage in the last couple fights. Volk, prior to that, he was hit and he was in some tough fights, but I wouldn't say it would be like, life-altering or career-altering type fights. Volk was an absolute master at his best. He knew how to win and didn't take a heck of a lot of damage in the process, in my opinion, for the most part. But these last two fights have taken effect. I think what it was more than anything else, I surmise, is the fact that he had an insane schedule. Israel Adesanya and Alexander Volkanovski were fighting so often. It's hard to keep up peak performances when you are not only fighting as often as you are, but going right into camps. And then all of that compounded by the fact that you are a champion. So there's extra stress on you from a physical, mental, spiritual part of it, because you're doing more interviews, you're doing more travel, no doubt. And then you're preparing for 5-round fights. You're preparing for 5-round fights every single time. So that will take its toll on you if you are keeping up that insane schedule. And I don't care who you are. We're all human. We all feel great until we don't. And I've done it myself where it's like, hey, I've fought with staph, I've fought with injuries and cuts and all these other things, and it worked for me. Why wouldn't it work for you again? Well, you're rolling the dice every single time. In this game, guys are getting better all the time, and a bad hair day could be the difference between winning and losing. So I think Volkanovski is going to go back to his grappling game. I think that's where, for me, I think that's where Diego Lopez has shown some vulnerabilities. Now, is he capable on the ground? Does he have a very good attacking style of jiu-jitsu? Yeah, I think he does. However, I think we've seen Volkanovski, when he gets on top, absolutely murders people with his ground and pound. He's short, he's stocky, he's hard to get a limb, right? I mean, he's got short arms, strong arms, and well, he's stocky. He does actually have long arms for his body, but
yeah, he's got long reach, right?
Yeah, he does have a long reach, but he's short and stocky and strong, and he knows how to utilize his ground and pound and positioning. He's been working a lot with Craig Jones, one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the world right now. And I think that I think we're going to see that style. Why? Because Diego Lopez is very dangerous on the ground. We've seen Volkanovski get caught in the past. Can Volkanovski trade with Lopez and maybe get their better of him? Yeah, I think he can. But what's the easiest path to victory? That's the thing that you need to consider as a fighter and as a team. And I think that they're probably going to go the safer route here. And there'll be some trading on the feet, but I think it's going to be mostly to set up the takedowns for Volkanovski, especially as we move on later in the fight. I think we'll see more and more pressure on the ground from Volkanovski in his attempt to try to take Lopez out of there. If we go back to the Lopez fight with Movsar Evloev, he showed some vulnerabilities there, and even against Dan Ige when he fought, was end up on his back and things like that. So I think Volkanovski is well poised to win this matchup, assuming he's going to be coming in here healthy and his chin is back to good, or at least close to good.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it, man? Because this matchup, like I was talking with Alex Volkanovski's coach, Joe Lopez, over there from Freestyle MMA, and he was breaking down the striking a little bit for me. He couldn't give out too much, but we know that Alex Volkanovski is great at fighting at distance, right? He uses feints, leg kicks, jabs. He keeps people on the outside, kind of makes them pay, picks them apart, and then eventually sort of slowly, systematically dismantles them. He'll use in the takedowns, like you mentioned, position control. I want to know, from your perspective, though, I was trying to break down Diego Lopez's striking style. It's an interesting one, right? Because fundamentally, he does a lot of stuff wrong still. He's still quite young. He'll lean down, obviously. He'll have his chin down a lot. He'll kind of just stand there. He'll have a very narrow stance, and then he'll just kind of move forward and move in and move in. And because he's so young and durable, and he's got so much power and energy, obviously that is a very dangerous style. It's kind of unpredictable. But at the same time, obviously, you've got a scientist here in Alex Volkanovski, who's worked with City Kickboxing, who's worked with Joe Lopez, who's working with JDM ahead of his fight with Bilal Muhammad, a very, very capable striker of freestyle MMA. How do you kind of see this striking styles matching up? Do you think Lopez is able to break into the pocket and make Alex Volkanovski pay, or do you imagine Alex Volkanovski is going to be able to maintain Diego Lopez on the outside with jabs and kicks and slowly sort of pick him apart, kill off his momentum, and then eventually start, working in those takedowns towards the end of the round to sort of systematically beat him like he has with a lot of the guys we've seen in the past? I
love it. A very educated question, my friend. I like getting into the nitty gritty, and when I can, it gets me excited. So thank you for that. I think that Lopez is best when he's countering people. When you throw a shot and you miss, Lopez will fire back with 2, 3, and 4 shots. Volkanovski really doesn't throw himself off balance too much on his strikes. He's very well balanced. I think that Lopez's best bet is to try to take a page out of what Ilia Topuria did and to try to back him up, pressure him, and see if he can catch him with that chin up in the air. That has been one of the I guess, we've seen it with some of the City Kickboxing guys as well with Israel Adesanya. But Volkanovski, as he retreats hands down just a little bit low, and he retreats with that chin up in the air. And that's a little bit concerning to me because those are certainly a pattern. It's a pattern that I noticed prior to the Topuria fight that he does. And when you have someone who's so defensively sound like Topuria, who is composed and ready to coil in the pocket like he is with that kind of power, it's a recipe for disaster. And I think it was a great approach from Topuria. Now, the bigger question is, like, is Lopez that guy? Can he do that? I don't know. I think he's capable. I don't know if he has that same level of power on the inside. I think you definitely have to watch out for the uppercut. But what Volkanovski needs to do is make sure that chin is tucked, making sure that it's a very small target, that he's protecting that, especially as he starts to get past that black octagon tape. That's where he becomes most vulnerable, in my opinion, as his back gets closer to the cage. So I think his footwork needs to be a little bit sharper than we've seen. He can't get complacent in this fight. And again, as he found out, because he was doing, I thought, quite well against Topuria for a little while. But I don't know if it's complacency, but certainly that pattern of lifting that chin up high got the better of him. And I would like to think that Joe Lopez and his team, and Volkanovski himself, have recognized that, have broken down the tape, and have really taken extreme measures to try to correct that. Because bad habits are one of the hardest things to get rid of, right? No matter what, whether it's in life or fighting, you really have to do some deep work in order to get rid of those things. And I'm curious to see if that's been rectified or not. If it isn't, he can still win the fight, but it also means that Lopez can pressure him and look for a way to get him out of there. In my opinion, Lopez is going to be most dangerous early in this fight. After about the 10-minute mark, I think is where Volkanovski can settle in and really start to pull away from him with all of his experience and prowess.
Dude, that's exactly what his coach said. That's their plan. They want to sort of drown him. Yes, they want to drown him. You know exactly what's cooking here, Ken Flo. And respectfully, obviously, Alex Volkanovski, such a great champion. You know, I don't want to be out here being like, oh, you know, like making all this stupid commentary. But I have to ask, like, if he comes out here this weekend, Lopez is able to break in, hit him hard, hit him early, take him out, and stop him. Do you think this might be the last time we see Alex Volkanovski? Like, this is a guy that's spoken about, like, he doesn't want to do it unless it's worth his time, doesn't want to do it unless he's involved with the belt. And sure, maybe in a fight or two, he could be back in that discussion. But if he just gets stopped right at the start of this fight in dramatic fashion, do you think this could be the end for Alex Volkanovski?
Gosh, I hate to think about that, because that would be the worst case scenario for a guy like Alexander Volkanovski. I wouldn't be surprised if that scenario took place. I wouldn't be surprised to see Volkanovski retire after that fight. I think that I would like to think anyway, and I think that's the case, that he's made enough money where he does not need to. What concerns me most is, what are you going to fill that void with? It was great to see, you know, some of the video out there of him working around his homes, one of his homes, maybe his country home or his farm, and getting busy down that way. You know, I know he loves to cook. I know he loves to do other things and hang out with his family, and he could certainly do that for the rest of his life and enjoy himself. I hope he can. But with a guy who's as competitive as he is, it's so important to replace that with these type A type personalities. I thought I was going to retire and, you know, broadcasting was going to be enough for me, and I was going to be good, and I was going to be happy. That was not the case. I need something physical. I need something to kind of keep that fire going, or at least keep that fire directed towards something, learning, improving, doing something physical. And I think the same case, it's going to be the same case for Volkanovski, whether it's, you know, working on the farm. Could that be the case? Could that be enough? I don't know. Maybe. I hope so. But yeah, I think with a guy like Volkanovski, I also think he's smart enough to know it's like, hey, you had an amazing run. You've done what very few people will ever do in mixed martial arts. You want to go out as close to prime form as you can. And he has nothing to prove after that, you know?
I would have loved a cooking show with you, Kenny. Cooking with Kenny? We missed out on an opportunity here. Cooking with Kenny. Hey, by the way, I love the pod you and John Anik do, the Alex Florian podcast, man. What are the like? People, you guys don't get enough credit. You guys have been going for so long. You put out such a great product. Everybody out here, make sure you go sub. There's going to be some big episodes, I'm guessing, next week after what happens this week. But I got to ask you, obviously, you mentioned when you were fighting, is there anybody when you watch, and I'm not asking from kind of like, you know, like a clickbaity type perspective, but I am genuinely curious. You would still, whenever you watch the featherweight and lightweight division, you would still see fighters where you're like, oh man, I kind of wish I could have gotten a chance to fight this guy or that guy, because you can't kill that part of yourself when you're a fighter. Like, you're just born with it and you have it forever. Is there anybody in the UFC where you're like, man, I just wish I could go back in time and just kind of have a crack at this one, just because it would be such an epic fight, or it would be such a great build-up, because you're great at building up fights too. Anybody in the featherweight or lightweight division, because there's so many cool people out there that you could have matched up with if you were fighting right now.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. For me, I don't really want to name any names just because, I don't know, the fact that I'm retired, I think it's not a great look. But I will say this, it would be anyone in the top 3 just because those are the guys that I always wanted to face. Like, I didn't enter the UFC originally because I wanted to become famous, or I wanted to make a bunch of money, or even honestly that I wanted to be a champion in the sport. That came later for sure. But I just wanted to see how far I could take it. I wanted to become a world-class fighter. I wanted to look myself in the mirror and say, I fought the best. I hung with the best. I was one of the best. And that's it. That really was my game plan originally when I got into it. I lost on the Ultimate Fighter miserably to Diego Sanchez and said, I can't go out like that. How far can I take this? How far can I really take this? And if I give it my all, and really that was the most important thing about it, really.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I mean, whenever you talk about your career, you've done so much incredible stuff. Like just the Ultimate Fighter one thing, right? How cool is that? Just the fact that you were such a big part of that show. Now it's still going, but that's like an iconic thing. Man, you mentioned Diego Sanchez. Did you see that dark side of the
I
ring
did.
on
I
it?
was in it actually.
Yeah,
I was.
yeah, that's right. You were. Yeah,
I
that's
did
right.
see it. Yeah,
Dude, that was wild, man.
Vice
Wasn't that wild?
Vice did an amazing job with it, but that was really hard to see. As
Yeah.
Diego, while he's had his share of troubles and all that stuff, and of course we fought back in the day. I remember him sending a very nice message when my youngest brother passed away and all that stuff, and he was sending prayers and all that. And I hate seeing guys like that who have given so much to the sport, just get beaten down.
Yeah.
Not only inside the cage, but outside the cage. Like, and I tell people this all the time. I said, a lot of the things that you encounter outside the cage is often worse than what you encounter inside the cage. Like, and it's horrible, and it's tough because Diego, can be a stubborn person, and he has this faith and belief in certain things, and he's out there, right? Like that's what makes him him. But certainly, those decisions got the better of him in choosing that coach. And gosh, I hope financially he's going to be able to recover and all that stuff. But it was great to see that Diego has filled that void that we were talking about with coaching. Now it seems like he's found a love for coaching. He wants to mentor other people, and I hope he makes it out of it as best as possible. But that was hard to see, man. That's what the fight game will kind of do to certain people, is that that there are a lot of leeches out there. And you really have to be careful and surround yourself with the best people possible. And if you do find that you made a bad decision, you let someone into your circle, you need to cut that out immediately. Cut that cancer out as quickly as possible and run the hell away from those people, because there's some bad people out there, man.
Yeah, man. I gotta tell you, dude. Yeah, they did a great job of telling the story, but it was so hard to watch. You're talking about Diego and his faith. I got to bring this question up, and I think someone was trying to troll us, but it's a genuine question.
Sure.
My question is, why do you hate Bryce Mitchell? Why is he, when he's one of the most humble, respectful fighters on the roster? So the background for this is, and this is just speaking of faith, because obviously Bryce has been talking a lot about his faith throughout this week, is there's a narrative that MMA media hates Bryce Mitchell, right? It's like Bryce Mitchell versus the MMA media. He was doing the press conference. It was kind of like MMA media versus Bryce Mitchell. And there's this incorrect narrative that for some reason people hate Bryce Mitchell.
Yeah.
And, I just wanted to bring that up because, from my perspective, no one hates Bryce Mitchell. I think he's a great fighter. As a matter of fact, I was rewatching his fight with Ilia Topuria, and I was like, this guy was actually doing pretty good against Ilia Topuria. He's a great size in the division. He's actually a tough matchup for John Silva. I think a lot of people are forgetting this is a guy that comes in with very good jiu-jitsu that I know you would very much appreciate, a different kind of outlook on things, a big size advantage. But what have you made of the fact that he's had this strange build-up and there's all these crazy narratives that go in that sort of take away from this fight? It's kind of been like a WWF 1980s build up to this, right? Where the UFC's just like, let's monetize whatever this is. And then this guy comes in and maybe he knocks out Bryce and that's good for us. Or Bryce wins and then there's more controversy and that's good for us.
Right.
We'll turn a blind eye to him having a microphone and be like, "Oh, we didn't know what was going on. We were busy making lunch for the kids for tomorrow at school." Yeah. What have you made of this silliness and craziness? I mean, it is cage fighting and pay-per-view, right? You're trying to draw buys.
Yeah, no, listen, I think that I guess I'll talk about the end part first and then talk about kind of what led to all of it. I think that this whole back and forth is great for Bryce in a lot of ways. It's great for John Silva. I think that the UFC has two absolute characters in there that are goers, that are going to move forward, that are going to be aggressive, that have differing styles for sure. But a lot of people want to see this fight now. Okay, so they've been going back and forth, and Bryce has been, as much of himself as he can be. This last week, he's just been, well, I guess trying to be as authentic as possible, I suppose, but and just kind of letting all hang out with what he believes and what he says and all that stuff. Now, what he believes and what he has said kind of is what kind of brought us here a little bit, right? And his comments. I guess it was, he was talking about Hitler, right? And that whole comment just, it was this huge firestorm after that. So I think that's what kind of shifted the narrative. And then of course you had the head honcho Dana White go on and just say how stupid he is and this and that and yada, yada, yada. But he also believes in free speech and he's going to keep Bryce on. And okay. But then the UFC goes ahead and in my opinion, gives him one of the absolute worst matchups you can give Bryce Mitchell. So, and I said this on my podcast with John, I was like, this isn't matchmaking. To me, this is almost like a mercy killing in some ways. Right. It's like they're looking at like, okay, John Silva, he's a knockout artist. I mean, he knocks people out cold. Mm-hmm. He's a personality. He's a guy that may have the belt one day. He's a guy that we want to think he was
the devil. Most likely, Bryce to think he's the devil,
right? So they're like, listen, we can build up. Yeah. We can build up John Silva, and hurt Bryce Mitchell potentially in the process. So there's that dynamic, and the UFC. They can be brutal. If you do something, if you say something, if you make business difficult, they will find ways to make things difficult for you. Period. That's the way they operate. They may try to defend that or say something otherwise, but that's just the case. So now you have this dynamic of like, all right, Bryce was the bad guy, but now he's being set up by the UFC. Not set up, but he's being given a difficult fight. So now you're like, oh, well, now the whole world is kind of against him. Am I now cheering for Bryce Mitchell? I don't know. My pick, I went heavy. We get a certain amount of money that we can allocate for pretend money for the podcast. And I go against a professional gambler and Brian Petrie. I put a lot of that money on John Silva because just watching the breakdown of the video, I have a hard time. Again, unless Bryce Mitchell can take him down repeatedly, I have a hard time thinking that Bryce Mitchell can win that fight. But, crazier things have happened.
And you saw the bad weight cut too. The funniest thing of the bad weight cut was they brought out, the sheet. And then Silva crawls out underneath from the bottom of the sheet onto the scales like a dog. Oh, my God. Dude, I hope...
Which is so awkward because he was naked the whole time while he was doing that, So you're like, what are you doing?
I got to tell you, if he wins, goddamn, there's going to be some fun that's made. Yeah. But either way, win or loss, I think that's a great breakdown right there, man. It's going to be very interesting.
Crazy.
Speaking of fights with a lot on the line, dude, Paddy Pimblett and Michael Chandler, we have to talk about this.
Yes, sir.
What is your take on it? Because from my perspective, as much as I like Paddy, I haven't seen the improvements that a lot of people are talking about when it comes to him. Like a lot of people say, well, he's filled out more. I'm like, okay. A lot of people say his striking's cleared up. I don't know. When I was watching him versus even King Green, he was still getting teeped, leg kicked, and then King Green shot in. I haven't had those things. And like against Tony Ferguson, it looked like he kind of lost momentum even towards that fight. He still backs up with his chin in the air. He doesn't really use his length to make people stay on the outside. When they come in, he doesn't have that Conor McGregor type power to catch them. And then you've got someone in Michael Chandler who's just basically going to run in, try to get in the pocket and knock him out. and he's going to wait for him to put that chin up to try and do it. Am I off here, Ken Flo, when I think that Michael Chandler has a good chance of winning, or are people seeing something that I'm missing here with Paddy Pimblett?
No, I think your analysis is spot on, my friend. I think that I think Chandler has a great chance of winning. I think that the vulnerabilities and the holes in Paddy Pimblett's game are still there. It's not as apparent, like it's not as like bad as it was early on. So he has made improvements. I do agree with you. He looks filled out. He looks like he's in great shape. He's more confident. He's putting it together better than ever. His takedowns are much better as well. But can Chandler knock him out? You better believe it. If Chandler, puts his hands on you and lands on your chin in the right spot, he can knock out anybody. He's that powerful. But my problem with Chandler is that his decision-making in fights is so questionable. Like, I don't know. Like,
is it on purpose, do you think? Like, is he thinking,
yeah, he's trying to be entertaining? He's definitely trying to be entertaining. And even his coach, it was kind of telling. To me, he, and I love Henry Hooft. He's a phenomenal coach and a great guy.
Just yells at you in the corner in between the fights. Just like, what are you doing?
Right.
You're an idiot. What are you doing?
The last fight he was doing that. And then they asked him, about Michael Chandler in one of his fights and about this upcoming fight. And he was saying something to the effect, he's like, well, Michael Chandler, he loves to entertain and he loves to put on a great show. And to me, that tells me it's like,
oh boy,
the first thing you should be saying about your fighter is like, this is the best I've ever seen him. He's doing everything I'm telling him. And he may be doing that too. But when you start saying about, like, you're talking about like the periphery of like how he's an entertainer and he loves to put on fights and Michael Chandler's going to do what Michael Chandler does. Like, to me, it means that like, he has no freaking idea how this fight's going to go down. And that would make me a little uneasy if I'm putting a lot of money on Chandler. So I picked Paddy Pimblett in this fight, not because I think Paddy Pimblett is this phenomenal fighter. He's not a perfect fighter. He is getting better. He does have a certain amount of star power. There's something likable about him, or there's something, charismatic about him anyway. And there's people that either hate him or like him, and that's kind of where you want to be as a fighter. Like, you want people to tune in to see you win or see you lose, and Paddy Pimblett has that. So I think this is a huge fight for him, though. You beat someone like Michael Chandler, I think you can call yourself legit for the most part. But Chandler, how do you rely on someone who is just willing to go face first into a wood chipper repeatedly? Yeah, I mean, it's like some of the decisions he makes during a fight are just like such head scratchers where you're like, man, yes, you are exciting, but why in the hell are you doing that? I don't know.
It just makes no sense as well, because it's like, all right, man, we all know you're exciting now.
Yeah.
You're towards the end of your career. Like, why don't you just strategize a little to win here? It's fascinating, though, because there's this whole conversation around whether or not Michael Chandler's a cheater. And Mike Heck had a great interview with him where he brought this up. And, Michael kind of broke it down, and he's like, look, I didn't know. He's like, I didn't know I was grabbing Dustin Poirier's mouthpiece. I thought it was his chin. And I'm like, okay. And then there's all this stuff. But then Luke Thomas and those guys, they from MK, they make a great comment on the fact that, hey, why wouldn't you cheat? If no one's making you pay, if you're going out there and you're able to grab this and grab this and grab that, and right now we're seeing points aren't being deducted. Umpires aren't stepping in during fights, aren't making people... aren't taking points of him. Is Michael Chandler just really clever here, or is this dirtiness still something that's not really appreciated?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure we get the whole story about who Michael Chandler is, and a lot of people have kind of talked about that maybe the persona he puts off isn't that same guy. He's not that, like, I think he's inspirational, some of the things he says.
It's like a Tony Robbins, kind of like an MMA Tony Robbins.
Yeah, and he lives by it. You can't say he's a coward, that's for sure. The dude's a stud. Yeah. He's a tough dude. But in regards to kind of maybe how he holds himself in an honorable way, I don't know. I don't want to speculate on that necessarily, but if you're cheating in the cage, like, I don't like that. You're talking about Luke Thomas, say, why wouldn't you? Well, you wouldn't, because then it wouldn't be you that really won that fight. It would be you, finding a weaselly way of winning that fight and breaking the rules. And, I didn't get into this game to break the rules. I got into this game because everyone has to play the same rules, and we see who the best fighter is. Like, that to me was super important. But who knows? I think if Chandler wanted to do things that were way worse, he could have also, right? It's like he's doing little itty bitty nitty gritty things that are annoying and maybe cheating, which I don't love. But it's not like he's, I don't know, eye gouging. Has he eye gouged anybody? I don't know. It's like that.
You know what
that's
he
like
is?
when you're doing that egregiously.
He's a veteran, right? He's a veteran.
Yeah.
He's been doing this for so long. I don't know. I think like it's funny. Like I wonder because this is the thing in this fight. You and me have said this guy doesn't strategize a game plan very well. He just runs at you, but at the same time, he's kind of like a wily veteran. But and then this is the thing that Paddy Pimblett's going to have to deal with, where you've got a guy with all this crazy experience, right? So this is a guy that wore Charles Oliveira like a backpack and jumped up and down in the middle of the octagon. Right. So you could argue, will he be doing something stupid like that with Paddy Pimblett and get caught? But at the same time, is there gonna be a sneaky like fence grab on the way down? Paddy trying to take him because he knows what's going on. I don't know. But what I will say is it's going to be fascinating because if Paddy Pimblett wins here, and by the way, this is the guy, Ken, who they put on the front of all the embeddeds. They put his face on all the embeddeds. And I was having a look. It must be the fact that his name must tick over when it comes to pay-per-view buys and interest. What do you think happens to Paddy Pimblett here if he wins? What do you think happens to him next if he's able to get this win over Michael Chandler today?
Yeah. Let's see. Let me take a look at the lightweight division here. Do a little cheating here myself. Okay, so I think
Mike Heck and those guys say Ilia Topuria. They think that's like the lock and
right, because they went back and forth together.
They went back and forth. I think personally, you have two big stars. Do you want to kill one off by doing that? But then if Topuria goes out there and knocks him out, is there that much shame in that? You know what I mean? I don't know. What do you think? We got Armin. We got Dan Hooker.
Yeah, that's a good question.
We got Charles Oliveira in the mix there.
Yep. So I would say this. I didn't consider that just because I think Ilia Topuria should get the next shot at the belt at Islam Makhachev. But my goodness, if he wins or if they don't do that fight, then Paddy Pimblett and him kind of make sense there. Pimblett is number 12. So maybe I would think that they would probably give Topuria someone higher ranked. And the other, I don't want to be mean here, but I don't think Paddy Pimblett has anything for Ilia Topuria. I think he knocks his head off. Like I really do. I don't. I think
Not to imagine, how he would
be way in over his head against someone like Topuria, man. Like, I would like to see Paddy Pimblett develop a little bit more. And it's funny, you go back and see how they were kind of yelling at each other and almost got into it face to face. But looking back, you're like, my goodness,
I know.
Goodness.
That's what I was like. I was like, who's this guy yelling at Paddy Pimblett? And then I'm like,
I know.
How dare Paddy Pimblett?
We didn't know just how good that Topuria was, did we?
No chance. I think it's fascinating, though, because the UFC is in this interesting spot where less people are watching the sport. They have to sell off and go to a new network or whatever soon. They don't have the Ronda Rousey, Brock Lesnar types to get that happening, the Conor McGregors. And then you got probably your biggest name outside of John Jones, Ilia Topuria, who's vacated his belt, but now he's going to 155. But the matchups to a title shot there are so messed up that it's like, who do you even put him up against to make it to a title shot? And then you got Islam, who wants to go fight at welterweight. So if Bilal loses against JDM, he might go up. So the question is, do they do and this is what a couple of guys have suggested, like Mike Heck and that, like an interim title fight with Paddy Pimblett. And then it's like, all right, at least we're capitalizing on these guys here. I don't know. But then you got Charles Oliveira, Dan Hooker, Armin,
Right. So as I look at it, I think, I don't know, do you go as high as Justin Gaethje and give him, you give Pimblett Gaethje? I don't know. And it's an interesting matchup because, obviously Pimblett's so good with his grappling. That would be interesting. And then maybe the winner of that fights the winner of Topuria and Islam Makhachev. I don't know. I think that would be cool. Or do you slow roll it, right? And you give someone like a Moicano or a Dariush, I don't know. I don't know what the approach is going to be, but certainly the UFC loves him. I think they realize that Paddy Pimblett's bringing in pay-per-view buys, and money is king in this game. So maybe they just fast track him. Who knows?
Couple of fan questions here. Quick one from the early prelims. It looks like Michael is now with the Fighting Nerds. We expecting a bit more
really?
BJJ. Yeah, this is. I got to double check this, but dude, Fighting Nerds, huh? Those guys are absolutely killing it, don't you think? They're like the team right now in MMA.
I think so, man. I think so. I mean, geez, they're on an amazing run right now. I love the fact that they're bringing in a lot of creativity and a lot of like unique flair to the game. And to see kind of a big Brazilian team back on the map is super cool. So I love them. I love what they're doing. I think they have a lot of great fighters, and whether it's Rufi or Jean Silva or all the guys that are fighting right now at a super high level. I think they're going to pose a lot of problems, and we will get, I would say, maybe at least one or two champs out of that group. I think the potential's certainly there, maybe even three. Yeah, I really like what they're doing, and I didn't know that Oleksiejczuk was with the Fighting Nerds. But if that's the case, so I'll say this: I would imagine that they have good Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I've seen some of it. I want to see more. I have a lot of confidence in the way they're approaching the striking game and the way they're integrating the whole of their mixed martial arts skills. That's awesome. They're in Brazil. You have to make assumptions. Hey, they should be good on the ground. Yeah, right. I haven't seen it yet. I want to see more. Like Rufi, Jean Silva, all these guys. Who's the guy at 185? Why am I blanking?
185? Kaya
Yeah.
Bahayo.
Bahayo. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that guy's everywhere, bro.
Yeah, Kaio's awesome, man.
Submission thing with Brandon Allen, actually.
Yeah, so Kaio looks amazing on the ground.
Yeah.
Kaio looks phenomenal on the ground. He has proven himself. Love the glasses. But as far as the other guys,
Kaio gave them to me.
Yeah, I like it. There you go. And Jean Silva has a nasty guillotine arm and guillotine that he utilizes. Yeah. But I just want to see more of them like off their back, getting back to their feet, more attacks on the ground, more kind of back and forth transition action. But yeah, dude. They get my approval. They're killing it right now.
Devon, bring out the tables. Are you saying I look like Bubba Ray Dudley, Alan? No, I appreciate you. Yeah, when I try to look like I'm from Fight Nerds, but I'm like the fat one out of Team 3D. And also, BC would be proud of you. Should appreciate you, man. Also, Dogface, appreciate you, man. Thanks for watching. Dude, I got to ask you this before we get off the main card. What about Pitbull and Yair Rodriguez? First question for me is, if we got Pitbull entering the UFC in his prime, do you think he would become a champion and have the same championship success as he had outside of the UFC?
I think he would certainly have that potential and that possibility. Hard to say, because like, what era are we talking about? Are we talking about the Jose Aldo era, the Max Holloway era, the Volkanovski era? I don't know. I mean, all those guys are absolute killers. But Patricio is a killer in his own right. I do agree with you, though. He's not necessarily in his prime. Can he pose some problems for Yair Rodriguez? Yeah, absolutely. I think both those guys are super, super dangerous early on in their fights. I think that where Yair has to be careful is a little bit later in the fight. He's got to pace himself properly. And I also think he's got to mind his P's and Q's when it comes to his takedown defense. I think that's been one of the biggest vulnerabilities in his game. He has this submission win over Josh Emmett off his back with that triangle and all that stuff, but that was such a quick transition. To me, what indicates whether you're good on the ground is like long periods of time of transitioning back and forth, showing actual grappling, positioning, and prowess, not just like it's like everybody saying, I remember when Johnny Walker was knocking guys out left and right. Yeah. He's an amazing striker. It's like, no, he's not an amazing striker. He's just landing shots right now. Let's just calm down, everybody. So just because he's getting like quick submissions doesn't mean you're a great grappler. But again, as we move forward, and he's gone against guys like, Volkanovski, and you see him on the ground, and Volkanovski just like looked like a buzzsaw against him on the ground. He showed some vulnerability with his positioning. If he's not able to get into some good submission positions, like main positions, fundamentals, it's been lacking. And his takedown defense has been lacking a little bit. So I imagine, and from what I heard, he's been working a lot on his wrestling defense. He's going to need this. I think Pitbull can definitely give him fits on the feet, but I think Yair, that's where he wants to be, and that's where he's most dangerous. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Pitbull trying to utilize his offensive wrestling, put Yair Rodriguez on his back, and try to look for a submission or some grounded pound, wear him down, maybe late in the fight, something like that. We'll see. I think it's going to be a fantastic fight while it lasts, though. Like I love this matchup.
What a fight! I would just buy it for this fight. This is a great fight. I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah, we were talking about UFC giving matchups and stuff like that, giving tough matchups. If you come from another organization, the UFC will rarely give you an easy fight for your first fight. They're like, we're going to throw you in the fire, man. You're from Bellator. Welcome to the UFC. Here's Yair Rodriguez. Let's see what you could do.
Hey, by the way, this is so fascinating because did you see Yair and Diego Lopez get into it at the press conference?
I did.
I'm Diego Lopez, such a nice young boy. Like, I've spoken to him a number of times. By the way, he's huge in real life. Huge.
Yeah.
But I'm like, he's such a nice guy, not a bad bone in his body. And then he's like full going back, and then Yair, and then it's like, whoa, and then Alex Volkanovski's just kind of like sitting there like what's gonna happen? But dude, this has actually basically built out the next fight, right? They're going to Mexico. If Lopez wins here, beats Alex Volkanovski, Yair beats Pitbull. Is this thing a done deal? Are we looking at Lopez and Yair now after that press conference, in your opinion?
You ate your Wheaties today, man. Your coffee, whatever it is, you're spot on. I couldn't agree more. That was the first thing that I thought of. I was like, that's how you do a promoter's job for them right there. Whether that was calculated or whether there was legit heat involved between those two, I think that's the latter case, by the way. You have two teams from Mexico, two guys who are living in Mexico now, who are both in the same division, who are built similarly. And I think that they're both trying to potentially build that next fight as well. I think that, I also wonder how much there is under the surface that we haven't heard about. There's a lot of crap talking that takes place between fighters sometimes and teams and rivalries.
There was crazy stuff. Like, apparently their teams have a rivalry. There was some kind of physical thing. All these things got involved, and it became, what's funny? Like, it's like slow, there's like Diego's talking slowly, but then when you got into it, it's like, it's like, they would go back and forth, man. It was like insane out of nowhere. They almost fought. It was good on that stage.
This is perfect because, again, if Lopez doesn't win this fight against Volkanovski, that's the next fight. Put that on a main event in Mexico or whatever, in Vegas, whatever.
That's a great idea.
I mean,
that's a great idea. No one's talking about that. That's great idea.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it. That's how you make the fight for the UFC.
Dude, that's perfect. And then, okay, so let's say Lopez does lose against Volkanovski, which I think is going to happen. And let's say Pitbull is able to do it against Yair. You go Yair and Lopez, which is a great fight for Mexico. That whole thing can continue. That's a main event, in my opinion. Lopez hasn't lost too much steam. It's Alex Volkanovski that he's lost again. And then, are we doing Alex Volkanovski versus Pitbull next, in your opinion?
Oh, man. I think that's intriguing. I really think that's intriguing. You're putting me on the spot with all these matchups, bro.
Well, let me break down a few names for you. We've got Mosar, he's in the mix, and obviously Alex said he's happy to fight him. We've got Aaron Pico, he's in the mix, but obviously he's got to win one before he steps in there. I think he's going to be on the show tomorrow morning, sort of breaking it down for me about what's going to happen with that. And then outside of those guys, I mean, who do we really have in that featherweight division?
So if Volkanovski wins, is that what we're talking about? If Volkanovski wins, I think they give him Movsar Evloev.
Over Pitbull. They didn't like the Movsar though. They didn't like
that. Is true. That is true. Well, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Maybe they do. Maybe they do give him Pitbull just because it's a more exciting fight. But now the question is who do you give Movsar? I don't know. Is it Ortega? They may try to get Ortega's jiu-jitsu skills to try to take Movsar out of the equation because the UFC, they want strikers, they want exciting. Well, I'll say this: they want exciting fighters. Yes, they would like it to be a striker, but they want exciting fighters, and maybe Movsar isn't the most exciting guy. I appreciate his style. I think he's fantastic. But
Oh, someone's saying Lerone Murphy versus Movsar.
I forgot he just fought and won. My goodness.
Dude, I don't blame you. That's technically probably one of the worst UFC cards. And that was a rough one. And Murphy, as good as he did in winning, didn't really with many fans of that.
Wasn't exciting. Well, yeah, maybe they give Murphy and Evloev. They put Murphy and Evloev on some prelim. And like, here you go, guys. I guess whoever wins will give you a title. But I don't know. Who knows? We'll see.
Well, dude, I was going to say, how about this matchup for Aaron Pico? I was talking about it on BTL over with the boys at MMA Fighting this week. One. What about Pico versus Ortega? Don't you think that's a fun fight to get Aaron Pico in the mix? You get him in there. The guy's known for his knockouts. Ortega probably didn't look the greatest in his last fight. You can really set him up if he goes out against Ortega and gets it done, right?
I think that'd be a great matchup just because, Ortega still is a big name in the UFC in that division. I think he'd be game for it. He is certainly game when he fights. Ortega is so damn tough, dude. And so is Pico. And Pico kind of has that Chandler type style where, man, he's exciting, but I question some of the decisions he makes during fights. But, he is exciting. He's got crazy knockout power, obviously an elite wrestler as well. And if he's able to really mature and put it all together and put together some, higher fight MMA IQ, he could really pose a lot of problems for guys. And I always believe that since his first fight. But Aaron Pico is a guy with a ton of potential, man. But defensively, he's got a lot of work to do. But that would be a great fight. Him and Ortega, I like it.
I like it, man. I like it. And Ortega, an interesting spot. I know he wants to go to lightweight, but I don't know, man. I don't know about lightweight right now for anyone. Yeah. No more. They don't need any more people at lightweight. Let's just put it like that. Next thing I want to know, John Jones is going to lightweight. You know what I mean? Like 90% of the people that everyone knows is a lightweight. Hey, just quickly, dude, the prelims, right? We're close to the show starting. I got to ask from you, Jim Miller, dude. How about this? He's versing Chase Hooper. This is a man that I know all of us have so much respect for. He's stepping in here against Chase Hooper. He's obviously a massive underdog when it comes to this fight. But what do you think we see from Jim Miller here? Obviously, he's battling like Lyme disease, age, all sorts of factors going in here. Do you think he could get it done? And also, what do you think his legacy will be in the sport? Because this guy is still going. It's unbelievable.
It really is.
Aaron Elkins is going as well. All these guys.
Jim Miller's from my era. Like, the fact that he is still fighting is insane to me. The guy is he's the Iron Man of MMA, no question about it.
Craziness.
I would love to see him do well, and not only would I love to see him do well, I think he can do well here in this fight. He's taken on a guy who has improved his striking. Chase Hooper has improved his striking. I don't think he's a world beater on the feet. But I do think he's pretty dangerous with his submission skills on the ground for sure. I think Jim needs to definitely mind his P's and Q's, but I think that's where Jim Miller is best at this stage of his career. I think he's best on the ground, and I think he has some tricks up his sleeves in regard to leg locks and attacks and positioning and ground and pound. So if Jim Miller gets off to a good start, I think it's worth putting a little money, sprinkling a little money on Jim Miller as an underdog, just because he's been around for so long. And it's amazing what Chase Hooper has done in the UFC, mainly because I didn't think Chase Hooper was going to do much.
Really? What do you mean? What do you mean?
I wasn't high on the Chase Hooper train, on the Chase Hooper hype train. But he keeps proving me wrong, man. And he gets a win here and does it impressively by submission. I have to give him his flowers, man. And I already have. Chase is tough, man. But it's hard to see that line and to see Jim Miller and his style and his experience and go, let me put some money on Hooper. Like I would put some money on Jim Miller. I think it's not a lot, but I think it'd be interesting as an underdog bet.
Dude, you know what's crazy about Chase Hooper, just sneakily before we wrap up? I mean, this guy is in a four fight win streak in the UFC. Yep. Because for some reason,
all finishes? Is it all finishes?
He's got one decision and he's got 3 submissions, and he's on a little bit of a Legends tour. The last one was Clay Guida in an armbar. Now we've got Jim Miller, so he's a bit of an RKO, Randy Orton sort of Legends tour. But I think this builds towards him coming out now, like you mentioned, with a win here. It's time to see. But you know what's crazy about this guy, man? He's 25 years old. He's been fighting in the UFC. I always tell people, I go, never go in the UFC unless you're ready for it. Because a lot of these young guys, they come in, they get beat up, they get spat out, and they're never able to really have a career, and it kind of messes with their heads. We've seen it happen a billion times. How crazy. We've seen some guys hang on there, like Jake Matthews, where they've been able to stay in the UFC. But how crazy is it to see that Chase has been able to survive all this time, and now he's on a 4-fight win streak going into this Jim Miller. I mean, speaking of good matchups, though.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think I agree with everything you said there. I think Chase is still so young. He's been improving. He's been clearly doing the work. And yeah, I think he's super dangerous on the ground, man. He's filling out into his body now. He looks bigger. He looks better, looks stronger, looks more conditioned. There was a minute there where I'm like, how is this chin going to survive being in the UFC? Like he was getting hit with anything that was thrown his way. It seemed like it was finding his chin, but he has made improvements with his striking. I have to give him that. And would love to see him do well, man. But yeah, you're right. I think this is one of those fights that he gets by Jim Miller. Now it's time for some like other younger talent for him to face.
Just quickly, man, as we wrap up, what's the fight that you're looking forward to the most? Any fights that we didn't mention here that you're excited to see? Obviously, like we didn't really talk about the fact that another legend and a guy that's 40 years old, Darren Elkins, he's actually fighting on the prelims as well, man. I don't know how the guy gets out of bed to get up in the morning and go to training. Yan Jinan, she's fighting against Verena, of course, and then Dan Ige, he's back against Sean Woodson. Some big fights here on the prelims, man.
For sure. Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued by the Danny Gay Sean Woodson fight. I remember when I saw Sean Woodson early on in his career, I'm like, is this dude something? Like, is he special? I couldn't tell. Like, he looked like he was really good on the feet. And then he had one performance where I was like, what the heck happened to him? That's not the guy I saw before. But I do think long-term he could be a problem. If he's able to get by someone like Dan Ige, then you got to take someone like Sean Woodson seriously now. Because, you know, given his height, his length, his striking prowess, when he's on his game, dude, he's something. But Dan Ige is something as well. If he gets on the inside, Dan Ige will mess you up. He has tremendous power. So I think this is an intriguing fight to see where both of their careers go, but particularly Sean Woodson, because he's just kind of the younger guy who we haven't seen in some of the bigger fights. This is the biggest fight of his career by far.
Yeah, man. Huge. What a spot. What a spot.
Yeah, and then Yan Xiaonan and Virna Jandiroba, I think, is very interesting. Curious to see how Yan comes back and to see if Jandiroba might be one of those women that ends up fighting for a belt in the near future.
Dude, this is both big. Like Yan, she's got a very sort of fan-friendly style as well, very exciting. So potentially that leads to. Hey, just quickly, people are sort of going off on us for not talking about this fight. Very quickly, Reyes versus.
What do you got?
Reyes versus Krylov, brother. We didn't really talk about this. Krylov, he was away. He hurt his shoulder, and he's been out of action now for a while. Comes back on a 3-fight win streak, I believe. Reyes been able to turn his whole thing around since losing to John Jones. He had to fight a bunch of absolute killers. Lost to them, but now has been able to turn things around. People are sort of pegging this as potentially a fight that's going to line up someone with like Carlos Ulberg potentially to then see who fights for the belt. What do you think of this matchup? Do you think Reyes can make this full comeback and beat Krylov here, or do you think Nikita's just back and is very, very dangerous? It's now his time to show the division what he's made of.
Yeah, I think people forget how tough Krylov is. And he can kind of beat you in a variety of ways. I think he's good on the ground. I think he's good on the feet. I would give the edge to Reyes on the feet when he's on his game. However, you know, he obviously took care of business against Smith, but to me, it wasn't the prettiest fight. Now, part of that has to do with Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith will kind of force you into kind of an ugly fight sometimes. I thought he looked great against Dustin Jacoby, and then in the Anthony Smith fight, I kind of was scratching my head a little bit. Like, is Dominic Reyes back? I'm not sure, and for that reason, I think Krylov is the favorite here for me. I think Nikita is most likely going to try to ground him and work his ground and pound, maybe and try to submit Dominic Reyes. But Dominic can wrestle. You know, he's a good athlete. He's got some serious power on the feet as well. And if Krylov is getting reckless out there, which at times he can do that, especially when he gets tired, Reyes can take him out. So I think it's a really interesting fight. I'm leaning towards Krylov, but I like Dominic Reyes. I think he's a good dude and would like to see him make this comeback and try to get another shot at the belt in the near future.
As we wrap up, look who we got from the ground himself. The man, he got caught in security because Donald Trump is in the building. Joining me and Ken Flo here as the show starts. Oscar, give us the lowdown. What's the lay of the land down there? How's the vibes? What are you excited about? Tell me and Kenny.
Sorry if the Wi-Fi is a bit spotty.
Yeah, I don't see him up yet.
I gotta say, just having Secret Service go through every single pocket of your bag does start to get a little concerning as you tick along. But we got through.
I know. How did you get through?
I don't believe it. I can't believe it.
Maybe anything on my phone.
No, I did scream at a few people, but no, we got through. Maybe Craig Jones took it all last night. I don't know. But yeah, it's good. We're here on the ground. First big card, I think, to me, feels like a little while, right? Very stacked. I'm excited, man. I think the atmosphere is going to be good. You're going to have your big walkout for Trump and probably his mate Elon at the beginning of the main card. Crowd will go electric. We're in Florida. It's going to be a good one.
Is Bryce Mitchell going to throw hands with Elon, do you think? Or is that going to be an issue?
You know, I'm kind of like, if Bryce won, I am curious the way the post-fight speech would go. I wondered if he was going to start goose-stepping across the octagon instead of McGregor's finish strut. But, yeah, man, that could be a wild one. So it'll be interesting to see how pro-free speech Dana is if Bryce goes, "You're a piece of shit, Elon," or something like that. That'd be quite entertaining. But, yeah, not sure. See what John Silva has to say about it.
Hey, just quickly before we wrap up, and Kenny, jump in if you got anything for Oscar here, but me and Kenny, we were breaking down the Volkanovski-Lopez fight. Kenny, Oscar, he knows the camp well when it comes to Volkanovski. He knows the guys that train with him really, really well. So I'd love to get your perspective, man. What kind of Volkanovski do you think we see? I think we see a return to greatness for Volkanovski, but Lopez is no slouch, man.
I think it's basically just going to come down to one of those things where, has Volkanovski got old, right? That's the trick of it. His skill set would be better, more varied than Diego's. He looks in unbelievable shape to the point I was actually a bit concerned he might be overtraining, but I think that's actually where Alex gets his confidence from. I did happen to watch a couple of the fight week sessions. Guy can go for days. So I think basically if the fight goes past 7 minutes, I would say Volk's probably got it in the bag. Can he, the one thing, right? Diego's best attack is those forward blitzes, 4-5 punch combo. He just throws at you kind of a bit spazzy. Volk, if he goes straight back with his chin in the air like he did against India, that could be night-night. So that's the main thing I would hope Volk avoided. Maybe I'd see him use cage wrestling for the first 5 minutes, negate that flurry, and move on from there. But we'll have to see, man. I'm sure I will be nervous the moment it starts. I can guarantee you that.
And there's going to be a cage day reaction. Hey, Kenny, did you see the stream when it came to this week, fight week? Oscar was accidentally caught on the stream. He was talking to media members and explained how he had accidentally displaced $4,000 at potentially a gentleman's club earlier in the week. Oscar, just quickly, it was a viral moment. It was caught in perfect 4K HD quality just as you got into losing that money at the strip club. How are we doing for money? How's the GoFundMe going? Can we raise some money? Will you be able to get out of Miami in one piece?
I borrowed $1,000 and then spent that last night as well.
You got to double down. You know what I mean? If you're going to go for it, go for it. Go for the knockout.
I thought I misplaced it. I went back. Turns out, no, they took it very clean. They're just so convincing.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Oh, my God. That's why I didn't go to Miami, man. I don't think I got enough money to make it there with you guys.
I can't even get an Uber to the airport. Yeah.
All right. If anyone's watching there and you're in the Miami arena, watch it there for the fights, please give Oscar Willis a lift home and a little bit of money to get back. Guys, we're going to wrap up because the show's starting. Oscar, you're going to have a cage side reaction. I'll see if I can get you on through the live chat later with James Lynch. Me and James Lynch will be doing a live watch along. Kenny, thank you so much for kicking things off. You and John Anik, you guys will be breaking things down on the Anik Florian podcast next week, right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you. Good to see you, Oscar.
You too, mate.
And then Dan Hooker jumps on post-fight as well live. There's a lot happening this week. Maybe Oscar could pop in for that as well. Kenny Florian, again, thank you so much, man. You're a legend. All right, fellas, let's enjoy the fights, and thank you so much for joining me on the program.